Rick, it is good to see you and meet you face to face finally. And good to have you on the Books for Guys podcast, man.
Well, thanks for having me, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And man, we were talking a little bit before we counted down to get this thing live. And you were born in Florida, spent a lot of time in Florida, and you went the complete opposite route, and now you're in Wyoming.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what made you move to Wyoming.
I've been coming to Wyoming for like 20 years for weeks at a time because I love the mountains. I love the West. I do a lot of wildlife and nature photography, and this is a great place for it. Um, so I would come out to Wyoming and Montana somewhere between 2 weeks and a month every year, and
Right.
would have moved here a long time ago, except we had kids in school, and didn't want to. So we had to wait until my daughter graduated high school and went to college, and then like, "If you gotta come home from college, you come to
Yeah,
Wyoming."
yeah, yeah. Do they like Wyoming, or do they
Yeah,
prefer
they love
warmer?
it. I mean,
They do?
I don't think my daughter would live here because she's likes the city amenities, but she loves visiting,
Yeah, that's
going
good.
out to
Yeah, yeah.
hiking and
Oh,
stuff.
that's awesome. Yeah, I was telling you, I got a college roommate. I'll give him a shout out on here, but he came down to the South for college, and he's been begging me to come visit him in Wyoming ever since then. So I got to get out there and explore and see what it's all about. I heard it's beautiful, and so meeting yourself, knowing someone else out there, it's just more inspiring for me to get out there and need to come check it out. But no, Rick, man, it's cool to talk with you because when I got information, when I got sent over about you, and I started looking at the books you write and the type of series that you create, um, man, if these aren't books for guys, I don't know what is. I was gonna read the first paragraph I read was about your book, the Contact Front, and I was going to read the paragraph I read when I was getting introduced to you. And it says, for a small time street hustler, Cam Alvarez, the choice is simple. He has no family, no friends, no place in the world, nothing to lose. When his latest con results in the death of a cartel hitman, Cam opts to join the Marines and leave Earth to fight a vicious alien enemy. That's all I needed to read to be like, I'm going to read this book.
Go to war, go to jail. That's the tagline.
Yeah, yeah. So, man, how do you talk about this book and your series? Because you've written a lot of books and you've written several series, but just talk about your story and kind of like, I don't know, just how you got interested in writing these type of books and just where these ideas come from. I was reading a little bit about your background too and how you grew up. Man, just share a little bit about yourself and kind of where that's transitioned to.
I grew up. I missed that part. Uh,
Well, Florida, then the military, where you're at now with these stories.
um, I started reading science fiction when I was a little kid. Of Robert Heinlein's Juveniles. This is back in the early '70s. When I was growing up in Florida, and I visited Kennedy Space Center when I was a kid. So the whole moon landing thing had just happened. I mean, and it was winding down, but as a little kid, I got all these not videos, but like you see things on TV. You have articles and books about the space race, and it really captured my imagination. And I was reading things like "Have Spacesuit Will Travel in Between Planets" and "Red Planet" by Heinlein. So and also Star Trek, the original series, was on reruns, and Lost in Space was on reruns, and Space 1999. And I was watching all that stuff as a kid. So I really jumped into science fiction at a very early age. And at some point, I realized that Robert Heinlein wasn't writing these juveniles anymore. If I wanted something like them, I should write it myself.
Yeah.
So I tried. I was a kid, so
Yeah.
it didn't go very well, but it's what started me on this route.
No, that's awesome. So you've always been interested in this then, and I was kind of laughing the other day because I'm just now getting into science fiction and these type of series, and I think it's because I think it's because where AI and some of this stuff is headed, like, it seems more real to me. I've always liked, like, Star Wars and Star Trek and that sort of thing, but, like, books have been a little bit different. But the more that we advance in this technology and I go down rabbit holes with aliens and, like, Egyptian world and, like, the history of the globe, I'm like, man, this stuff is fascinating because it's really not that far fetched. Like there's a lot of realness that I tie to it now as just a fan, and so, uh, like I said, when I was reading through some of your books, I was like, dude, this is great, and I have a lot of friends that have always been interested in these type of series, so, um, but, so again, I was just so excited to talk with you and learn more about it, but, how do you I guess from a from just an idea standpoint, obviously you're interested in the subject, but how do you come up with a plot and the characters and to be able to do as many books in a series that you do?
Well, coming up with the ideas is the easy part. Anybody who's a writer will tell you that ideas just they pop into your head constantly. You
Yeah,
you read an article, you watch a movie, you watch a video, and you're like, "Hmm, what if I wrote a book about this?" You
yeah,
don't have time to do all of them, you don't have time to write them all down. Um, but when I was younger, I used to collect, those spiral notebooks, college ruled 5 subject, 200-page notebooks,
yeah,
and I would just fill those up with ideas when I was a kid all the way up until, through college.
yeah,
So when the time came that I decided to try to be a professional writer, I had ideas coming out the yin yang, it was that wasn't a problem. Um, the problem is finding ones that work to turn into books. Because some ideas, that's a short story, that's a novella at most, but you gotta have an idea that you can turn into a novel. So being able to tell one from the other is part of, maturing in the craft, I guess.
yeah. Did you do anything else, like, while you were trying to become a professional writer? Like, did
I've
you
done a lot of different things.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, what are some of the stuff you did to kind of, like, get you through to where, now I'm assuming you just write now, right?
Yeah,
Like, your stories is your job, which was the
yeah.
ultimate goal. But how long did it take you to really, I don't know, get to a point where you're able to make this your world and your full time?
Well, what happened was around the mid-90s, I guess 1996-ish, my wife was expecting our first child. My wife is a pharmacist, so I was working, you know, um, a management job in a car rental place, which wasn't a bad job, but she made, like, twice as much money as I did, you know? So when the time came, you're like, "Well, we wanted someone to be home with the kid." I said, "Well, I mean, you can stay home, and then we'll be eating ramen for the next couple of years." So I stayed home with my son, and I decided if I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna get serious about the writing that I've always been trying to do, and I'm gonna try to get published. So I completed 2 books that I'd been kinda half seriously working on for 7 years, you know, because I was in the Army before, and I would write a little bit here and there and never really had, time to do anything seriously about it. So I wrote 2 books. I got an agent, which at the time, that was considered, more than half the battle back in the '90s, you get an agent, well, you're set. Except that I had bad timing and did not get published for various reasons, a lot of which had to do with the attitude of the big publishing houses back in the '80s and before were family owned.
Mhm.
Private families owned them, and they hired people who thought like they did, and those people would take a chance on new writers. As the '90s progressed, more and more of the publishing houses were kind of taken over by, international conglomerates. One company would buy out another. And by the late '90s, you had people who were set in their careers, like John Ringo, David Weber, you know, uh, Peter Hamilton, all the big names in science fiction, I should say. Stephen Baxter, all the names you hear when you think of science fiction, they already had their careers set. So they would publish anything those guys wrote.
Yeah.
But if you were a new writer, your ways to break into writing became more limited. And a lot of the people who broke in back then would write for established franchises like BattleTech or Star Trek or Star Wars. They would come in and write in a place where people would invite new writers, but I was not aware of that as much as I should have been, I guess, because this is when the internet was in in its infancy. You know, I'm still using those America Online discs. So I did not get published, and I kind of gave up. And I started writing a lot of books, but I didn't finish them. So I had a hard drive full of 10, 20, 30,000 word starts to books. And I didn't really get published until the Kindle revolution. Because I had a friend who told me in around beginning of 2011, he's like, hey, there's these people that are making loads of money publishing their own books on Kindle as
Yeah.
ebooks. I'm like, what's an ebook?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but I heard about people
Yeah,
like
I just got a Kindle, like, 2 years ago, which is crazy.
I heard
I'm a
about
late
people like
bloomer.
Hugh Howey, the guy who wrote Wool. Well, you may not have heard of Wool, but he has a TV show now based on that book,
Yeah, interesting.
and he became a millionaire self-publishing on Amazon. I didn't know anything about it. I thought it was for me, self-publishing was, vanity publishing. It was for losers, for
Yeah.
people who had like boxes of 1,000 books in their garage, that they never sold.
Yeah.
But so I said, what the hell? Maybe somebody besides my immediate friends and family will read these two books. So I slapped these homemade covers on them that really sucked and put them on Amazon for 99 cents a piece.
Yeah.
And I would have done it free, but you couldn't. They wouldn't let you.
Yeah.
Uh, and didn't do any advertising, nothing. And they sold like 30,000 copies in the first couple months. And I'm like, maybe I should write more books. So I started building up. I wrote a book a year for the next 5 years. I finished up 2 trilogies, one with each of those 2 books. And then I started, and I was doing it what they call seat of your pants writing, where you just sit down at the computer and write whatever comes into your head.
Yeah.
But after that, I started outlining the books, planning what I was going to write ahead of time. And I started writing faster. First it was 3 months, and then 2 months, and then a month for a book. And then that's how I wound up at this point with like 86 of them.
Yeah.
But it took me until late 2016, early 2017 before I really hit it big enough to consider writing for a living. That is when I was almost 50 years old when I was
Yeah.
able to
Yeah.
write for a living. So
It's
it's
basically 20 years of still doing what you like to do. You would write, and it never, I mean, you put stories together, but you really weren't putting them out there for anyone to look at. Kindle comes along, and you're able to at least just kind of toss it out there for the world if anyone's interested to look at it. What a first few months that is. You actually have 30,000 people download your story, and
and
then
it
that's a
still
lot.
ticks me off to this day, Chris. Um, all those books that I started and never finished in that 10-year period, if I had finished those books, if I'd written like the sequels to the 2 books that I finished and I had put them out like a month apart, I could have made hundreds of thousands of dollars because it was the Wild West on Kindle. You put anything that's halfway decent out, people would flock to it. Not like
Yeah,
it is now. Now you have to know marketing, you have to know ads, you have to advertise on 5 different platforms.
yeah,
Back then, you just put out a good book, and if anybody was interested in, like, military science fiction, they'd jump all over it.
Yeah. That's incredible. Well, I mean, it's one of those things, like, there's so many lessons in all aspects of life and career that you look back and you're like, "If I'd have just done that." I mean, heck, Bitcoin, I'm like, "Dang, if someone would've told me about Bitcoin and, I probably would've been dumb enough to buy some," and then, everyone just
I was around when people were mining Bitcoins,
yeah.
and I was encouraged by people to do it, and I'm like, "I don't feel like buying a computer, that's I could have been a multimillionaire
Yeah,
just
yeah,
by mining a couple of them," and,
yeah.
another thing, yeah.
And I remember, like, a couple of my, like, guru friends talking about it back in, like, 2012, 13, and I just never was interested. I'm like, "I don't know what you guys talking about, whatever, on to whatever." But it's like that. You think of these things and you're like, "Dang, if I'd have just done that step, like, how much more I would have had right now," or whatever. But they're great learning moments, and they make for great stories to share just your journey. Because I mean, that's incredible. Like, when you look at you now and you have all these books out there and people are you probably have people who look up to you and they're like, "Hey, I wanna write like Rick. Rick has great stories. How can I write similar things?" Or, they're interested and they read all your work. Um but knowing and appreciate you being vulnerable and kinda sharing your story of like, "Hey, it took me 20 plus years to get to a point that I'm actually like, now this is my career and job." But it took a lot of work and a lot of time and, a lot of doubt, it sounds like, and then, thankfully, the Kindle comes along and then helps make it possible. So, which is kind of interesting. I was listening to the Nvidia CEO talk the other day on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking about like catching lightning in a bottle um, with their chip, and he's like, we're the equivalent of catching like 3 or 4 Hail Mary passes that, if those didn't happen, we wouldn't be here today. Um, but kinda like similar, which is your story with Kindle. It's like, what do you think? Do you think you would have ultimately pushed yourself to get to where you're at now without that? Or was that moment like a, "Hey, I don't know, without this Kindle coming through, I don't know where, my career
Oh,
would be
no,
at today."
I would never have finished another book.
Yeah.
That was
So
it.
interesting.
No, I didn't have I had kids, I had, you know, job, I had responsibilities, I couldn't throw myself into, and plus I had as a hobby, it was like a side thing. I had other hobbies I was more interested in
Yeah.
at the time. Um, so it was the Kindle was the only thing that kept me being a writer, was having, because it's one thing to finish a couple of books that nobody's ever going to read.
Yeah.
It's another thing to keep writing them after that when you realize, hey, nobody's ever going to read these.
Yeah.
So there's no real
Reason or purpose.
inspiration to finish
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
If it gets tiresome, if you reach what they call the muddy middle of a book, and you have to power through it, if you don't have any inspiration to power through it, it's like, I'm just gonna start another book.
Yeah. Yeah. But when people will read it, it gives you that extra motivation, which leads me to my next question, actually, Rick. And I ask a lot of people this. Now that you've gotten to a point where people read your book and you're working on series, and obviously you love what you do and you love the subjects you write about. Are there ever times, and I know like every job, not every day is just the most exciting, even when you like what you do. Um, but do you ever find that you have to write because you're now responsible to complete a series in a story? Is there ever times where you're like, man, I really just not feeling this, but I've already got to kind of complete it because I've started it? Or is it mostly joy and passion that still drives through every series that you do?
Um,
It could be both too.
the only time that I feel like it's a job, like it's a chore, I guess, is if it's a later book in a series and it turns out the series isn't doing that well,
Mm,
but you've got to finish off the series because you can't just leave people hanging.
yeah,
'Cause no matter how few, no matter if you're not selling as much of a book series as you like, there's people who love it. There's people who would really be mad if you don't finish it, and you're poisoning the well if you don't, finish your series and give them a conclusion.
yeah,
So when you get to the to the last books in a series that you don't really wanna write anymore because you should be doing something else to make money, it can
Yeah.
be a little frustrating, but I still like writing the story.
Yeah.
I guess the frustrating part is I obviously wanted to write more in that story or I wouldn't have started it, you know?
Yeah.
So the idea that I have to close things up, I don't know, just that can get that can make it frustrating to write.
Yeah. Yeah. So a little bit of like responsibility to finish because you have to. But that's still better than the alternative of never being able to do this before. So I could see where it's like, hey, while I may be annoyed having to do this, this is still better than the alternatives. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, you make a good point too. You don't want to like if you've got people that are following your work, you want them to continue following your work. So you don't want to tick someone off and then push them away by not finishing a series. So I see
I'll tell you,
that.
there's nothing that has frustrated me more in life about art than TV shows that I just loved ending their season on a cliffhanger and then not being renewed.
Never finished
I
them.
I got to the point, and I don't know if people who run these, you know, studios understand this, but I get to the point where I won't watch a series now
Yeah,
unless I know that it's either already finished
they will finish.
or they will finish. You know, it's like just been burned too many times.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. There's a lot of things out there for me like that right now where I'm like, "You're pushing me away. Don't do that." Which if you're pushing me away, you're probably pushing a lot of other people away too, so, by just not finishing. So that's a good point. Do you have so, like, your process when you're writing a book in a series, are you focused on just one at a time, or are you ever balancing 2 and 3 different books, stories, series at the same time?
I'm
Or do
always
you like
balancing at least 2 series at the same time. What I'll do usually is I'll write a book in one series, and then a book in another series, and then a book in the first series. I'll alternate. I used to write 2 or 3 books at a time, like in a day. I haven't done that lately, not because I can't do it or because I find it tiresome or I don't enjoy it. Uh, it's mostly because of the publication schedules of one of my publishers. He needs to have a book every other month, every 60 days.
Yeah,
Um, and since I'm writing 2 series, I have to write his like in a month, write another series in a month, and write his in a month. So every 60 days he can have a book.
yeah,
Um, that's it's not I would prefer to go back to doing what I was doing. I have this theory because at one point in my life in 2020, I was writing 3 books at a time, 2,000 words in one book before lunch, 1,000 words in another book, like between lunch and 2 or 3 o'clock, and 2,000 words in a third book before bed. Uh, and that was very efficient, but, uh, it was a little bit too much. It kind of, like, burned my brain out a little.
that's a lot of writing, and
Yeah.
thank you. And
From
sitting
there
and
from there, I went to writing 2,000 words in 2 books. 2,000 words in one book, 2,000 words in another, until this whole schedule came around. But I had a theory that I really wanted to try out, and I know it would work, that I can write 3,000 words a day. I do that every day now. I thought, I'll write 3 different books in a day, 1,000 words in each, because 1,000 words is nothing. You get to 2,000 words is not hard to do in a book for me. It's like I can do 2,000 words, and that's comfortable.
doable.
3,000 words is pushing it. It's like the last 1,000 words is hard.
Yeah,
That's the hardest part of the day is that last 1,000 words. But I know I could do 1,000 words, 1,000 words each in 3 different books, and it would be easy.
yeah.
And I would have 3 books done in 3 months, if they're 90,000 words each.
Is that because it keeps your brain, like, fresh, switching from one
Yes.
thing to
Yeah,
another and not just having to
exactly.
constantly focus on the exact same thing?
But the problem is, like I said, the one of my publishers needs a book every 2 months, so I'm kinda screwed when it comes to that.
The
If
schedule
that ever
dictates.
changes, I will go back and I will do 1,000 words each in 3 different books.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the day when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Your schedule kinda dictates what you need to do now, but hopefully you can get to where you prefer, which that answered my next question, honestly, was just kinda like your process of, like, when you write, and it sounds like you have a regimen where every day you've got a schedule that you sit down and knock out,
I don't
for the
have a
most
s
part.
I don't have a schedule, I have a goal,
Okay.
and, um, it's kind of I don't wanna say psychotic, but it is a little, uh, that I do those 3,000 words a day no matter what. So if I get up at 8 in the morning and I write, 2,000 words before lunch and then another 1,000 after lunch, well, the rest of my day is free.
Yeah.
Uh, but as happens sometimes, if I get wrapped up in something and I don't get started until 2 in the afternoon or 5 in the evening, I still gotta write those 3,000 words, which means I'm up till 1 or 2 in the morning doing it, but they get written either
Yeah.
way because that's the
Yeah.
job, you know?
You stay disciplined in the fact that you're going to write this
Yeah.
many words a
The
day,
only
no
the
matter
only
what
time
your schedule looks like.
the only time that changes is if I'm traveling, like, if I'm driving, obviously, all day
Okay,
long,
yeah.
I can't do it, but
You
and
stay
and
pretty st
I had surgery on my elbow, and, during all of that, I couldn't for a few days, I couldn't write, period, so I had to dictate to my wife while she
yeah.
typed, and
I'm sure she
word count
loved
went
that.
the word count went down, but, other
Uh,
than that, it's always 3,000 words.
yeah. That's incredible. That's incredible. I always find that interesting. I know there's some flexibility to it. Your schedule allows for that too, to be able to write when you can, but I always find interesting, what processes look like. Are you an early morning, your brain, you're up at 5, or do you write late into the night? Sounds like
Well, if
you're kind of depending on what the day brings.
my preferred schedule, the way I like to do it, is I start writing about 10 o'clock in the morning after I have breakfast and just get my brain kicked in and get some caffeine in me. And get 1,000 words done at a kind of a leisurely pace up until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I'll go work out and then I'll come home and I will just buckle down, get 1,000 words done by around 8 o'clock at night, and then do another 1,000 words by 11 after I take a break, between 8 and 9 or so.
Yeah.
So that's easy for me. That's like an easy way to do it. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. Some
Yeah.
things pop up.
Yeah, life happens. No, that's awesome. That's really cool to know. Uh, Rick, I got one more question for you. I appreciate this, man. This is so interesting to me because I've never written a book. I'm a fan that reads other people's work. So I'm just intrigued by the craft that each person and each author has and just the style. Because I talk with people who write biography and fiction and nonfiction and just different genres. So it's just again, it's very fascinating for me to learn. I know a lot of people that listen and watch this. They text me all the time, like, "Man, that's cool. I never knew that." And so it's just cool to learn new things. But um, you seem to have been a reader and a writer your whole life. So maybe this is a hard question, but what's a book or two that has been your favorite? And maybe it's had an impact on you personally or professionally, but and maybe you've reread it more than once. And then the other
There's
side of that question is
hundreds
when
of books
people
I've
ask
reread.
you for a book recommendation, what do you like to recommend to others?
Well, a book that had a big impact on me is Have Spacesuit Will Travel by Robert Heinlein, because I read it when I was, like, 7 years old, and I've read it
Okay.
over and over and over, and it's a dated book. It's a juvenile from, like, the 1950s of
Okay.
America, a future America that never existed, but it's a really involving book, especially for a kid. Um, but as far as one that I would recommend that I think really encapsulates everything that I love about science fiction and that I love about writing. There's a writer named Walter John Williams, one of my favorites, and I'm not a fan of all of his stuff, but there's there was a segment of his career that I really liked, and one of the is my favorite book from that segment is called Voice of the Whirlwind, and the thing that I love about it, it combines cyberpunk, which I was heavily into in the '80s with William Gibson, you know, um, the space opera of Heinlein, and the military science fiction that I began to get into in the '90s in one book, and he does it he has a way of, conveying themes, like overarching themes without beating you over the head with it. He he just, like, takes, um, certain philosophical, I guess, is the word. I mean, not really religious, but philosophical ideas, and he examines them from several different angles in this book, and I just found it fascinating the way that he was able to approach this idea from all these different ways in good and bad lights. Like you can use this or misuse it or live by it. It was really cool. I recommend that book to anybody who wants to get. I mean, I think somebody who's new to science fiction would really get a good idea of all the different aspects of science fiction by reading that book.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna add that to my list because, like I said, this is like a new interest of mine, and now I'm going down a rabbit hole because I find I am interested in this and these stories, and now I see certain movies different ways now, and just different books. So this is super cool. I'm gonna add that to my list then because that would probably be a good one for me personally. But
If you want to
Rick,
get into science fiction and you want a really good non-book way to do it, I mean, there's a lot of movies out there, a lot of TV shows I could recommend.
yeah,
I mean, I think one of the best science fiction movies that people, I don't know, they expect, I guess, not cliches because that makes the tropes, like a lot
okay,
of the science fiction tropes that you would find in different books and movies that people have
okay,
loved for decades. It's funny because it's just the second movie on a
yeah,
series of movies based on an old TV series, but it manages to encapsulate a lot of what people expect out of military science fiction,
okay.
especially. And the Expanse TV series is uh, is the other one that I would recommend.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm always looking for good show recommendations too, and movies and such that
The
again.
Expanse is one of the best science fiction TV shows ever made.
Okay. Okay, cool. I'll add that to my list because I kind of like to wind things down at night, before going to bed and watch something to kind of take my brain off. Because I like reading, but sometimes that's kind of part of my day where I try to knock it out, and I just need something to tune out and watch something good. So I'll add that to my watch list. This is a good time of year for me to do that too. So but, no, well, Rick, man, it's been a pleasure meeting and talking with you, and, you have so many books for me to catch up on and read, and, I'm gonna work to get all of these on the Books for Guys website, so if and everyone can find the books anyway, but I'll have them on there if anyone wants to go through there with links,
And of
to take
course,
you to them.
this is available in Barnes and Noble and also on Amazon.
Yep, perfect. We'll include Amazon links and everything to that, but yeah, you can find them. We'll include the websites to find them too. And at the rate you're going, you have so many more books to write too. So there's gonna be a constant list and following to see what you put out there, and can't wait to see that because you're rocking and rolling.
Mortgage company depends on me.
Yeah, yeah. Good point, good point. But, no, we appreciate it, Rick. Can't wait to follow your work and catch up on all your books you've already written.
Thank you for having me on.